Good day and welcome to Working with African American Individuals, Couples, and Families Expert Panel. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Jen McHenry. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the National Resource Center for Healthy Marriage and Families Expert Panel webcast entitled Working with African American Individuals, Couples, and Families. Again, my name is Jen McHenry, and I'm part of the Resource Center team. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, especially our panelists. Before we get started with the presentations, there are just a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over. The audio for today's webcast will be broadcast through your computer speakers. Please make sure that the volume on your computer speakers is turned up so you can hear the presentations. Today's expert panel will feature a combination of presentation slides and streaming video. If you're having technical difficulties viewing or hearing any part of the webcast, you can send us a Q&A message and someone will respond with assistance. Video of our panelists will be in the largest box of your screen. The right-hand panel will feature additional supporting materials. The top box will feature our presentation slides. There are a few special resources that we'll be discussing in today's expert panel that are available for you to download from the pod in the middle right of your screen. This is labeled Resource Center Materials. Please click on the name of the file you wish to view and then the download button to open or save the resource to your computer. Today's expert panel will be a facilitated discussion with time at the end of the initial conversation dedicated to addressing your specific questions. We'll be collecting questions over the computer and encourage you to submit them throughout the duration of the webcast. To do this, use the question and answer pod in the bottom right of your screen, designated by the letters Q and A. Type your questions into the open field at the bottom and then click Send Question or press Enter. You'll receive a reply thanking you for your question, and then your question will be forwarded to the moderator and held to the end. The material from this presentation will be posted on the Past Events archive of our website, healthymarriageandfamilies.org, under the Training, Technical Assistance, and Events tab. For anyone interested in tweeting during our expert panel, we invite you to use the hashtag Marriage, RESCTR, Marriage Resource Center. You'll find it listed here at the bottom of the slides. Before we get underway, we have one short question on your screen we'd like you to respond to. Some of you may be participating in today's webcast in a group, which is fantastic. To help us get an idea of how many individuals we're reaching today, please answer the question on your screen. If you are in a group, including yourself, what is the total number of individuals watching today's webcast? So again, if you're just in the room by yourself, you're 1. If you and another person are in there, please enter 2. I'll give you just a quick minute to fill that out. All right. And thank you so much. Hopefully everyone was comfortable with answering that poll questions. They may or may not make another appearance later in our webcast. For some of those of you who may not be familiar with the Resource Center and what we offer, we're going to show you a quick, short overview of who we are. We're queuing up our video, and it should broadcast in just a minute.
Strong families are the foundation of strong communities. Yet many families you serve struggle to achieve self-sufficiency, and as service providers, you struggle to support them within traditional safety net service delivery systems. The National Resource Center for Healthy Marriage and Families works with federal, state, tribal, and local government agencies to promote the value of healthy marriage and relationship education skills. We encourage their integration into safety net service delivery systems as a holistic approach to strengthening the families you serve. We offer a virtual resource center available 24 hours a day that is user-friendly and easy to navigate. The website also includes success stories and a calendar of upcoming events. Our searchable library has over 300 resources, including research on promising practices that supports the need for and benefits of healthy marriage education skills. The library also includes stakeholder-specific products developed by experts in the field like tip sheets, fact sheets, and research to practice briefs. Visit our virtual training center to learn more about free training and technical assistance, including webinars and in-person and online training opportunities. If you can't find what you are looking for, we have a call center that is staffed Monday through Friday so you can speak to a live person. Healthy marriage and relationship education include interpersonal skills like communication and conflict resolution, as well as critical skills like parenting and financial literacy. These skills serve as the cornerstone for strong families. For more information on healthy marriage education skills, visit www.healthymarriageandfamilies.org, info@healthymarriageandfamilies.org, 1-866-916-4672.
Great. Now I'd like to introduce and welcome the host for today's expert panel, Robin Senezal, the Project Director for the National Resource Center for Healthy Marriage and Families. Robin Senezal is a Senior Manager with ICF International, and as I said, serves as the Project Director for the Resource Center. In addition to her training and technical assistance work with ICF, she also brings with her over 26 years of government experience specializing in strategic public-private partnerships to strengthen low-income, high-stress communities. She is a certified family life educator and has authored numerous publications on promising practices associated with serving low-income and culturally diverse populations. And I'll turn it over to Robin, who will tell us a little bit more about today's webcast and introduce us to our panel. Robin?
Thanks, Jen, and welcome to all of you. We appreciate you joining us today. I'm particularly excited to be joined by my esteemed colleagues, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about. So without further ado, let me start with the introductions and brief bios. First, we have Cherise Johnson. She serves as the branch chief for the Healthy Marriage and Responsible Fatherhood Discretionary Grant Program with the Office of Family Assistance at the Administration for Children and Families, which provides the funding and technical assistance to the 121 Healthy Marriage and Responsible Fatherhood grantees across the country. Ms. Johnson has over 25 years of experience in human services, including experience administering programs that promote child and family well-being, family self-sufficiency, and child welfare services across a multitude of programs related to children and families. Cherise? And then we have Dr. Tara Jordan. Tara is an associate professor in the Department of Human Development and Family Studies at Iowa State University. She teaches both undergraduate and graduate level courses. The focus of her descriptive research is to understand the meaning that individuals attach to their intimate relationship experiences and to examine nuanced behaviors and attitudes in romantic ties. Dr. Jordan earned her dual doctorate in Human Development and Family Studies and Demography from the Pennsylvania State University and worked 8 years as a research scientist at the University of Georgia. She is also the author of several of the products that are highlighted here today. Tara? We also have with us today Kenneth Braswell. Kenny serves as the director of the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse, which aims to provide, facilitate, and disseminate current research, proven, and innovative strategies that will encourage and strengthen fathers and families. Kenny also has over 22 years of community development experience, including serving as the executive director for Fathers Incorporated and the author of When the Tear Won't Fall. Kenny? Nisa Muhammad joins us as the founder of Wedded Bliss Foundation, a community-based organization helping teens, singles, and couples create and maintain healthy relationships and marriages so more children grow up with the benefits of a two-parent family. Her work includes the creation of Black Marriage Day in 2002 and co-authoring Basic Training for Couples, a series, a relationship education curriculum series. Thank you. And Dr. Rosario Slack. Over 20 years of experience working with couples, parents, teens, and families. He also serves as the pastor at Temple of Faith Deliverance Church of God in Chattanooga, Tennessee. In addition to providing direct services, He developed 10 Great Dates for Black Couples Guide, as well as co-authoring Basic Training with Nisa Muhammad, which was designed to empower couples to build better relationships. Dr. Slack's also the lead author on one of our most popular resources, the African American Toolkit, which will be highlighted here today. Thank you, panelists. I appreciate you joining me today. So I want to go ahead and get started with my first question to Sharice. Sharice, the Administration for Children and Families has awarded $75 million for healthy marriage programming and $75 million for responsible fatherhood program activities. Your agency provides oversight to all of these grantees around the country that do this work, including the Resource Center. From your perspective, what value does the federal government see in investing in marriage and relationship education programming?
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Robin. First of all, I would like to say this is a wonderful opportunity, and I think that when we think about the government and why we fund this, we're really looking at opportunities and ways to support families. We're thinking about access to resources. Some of the education parts of this program, families may not typically have access to these resources, so through the classes and things like that in the community, you have access to things that you may not typically have access to. We're also thinking about how can we promote and strengthen families. What are the things that need to happen in a community that's driven by the community uniquely, that they know the issues that are going on in the community, they know how to develop programs that really reach vulnerable populations or just resources to strengthen the community. So when we think about community development, that's one impact. Also, we're thinking about how can we support things that really give us indicators of what really matters in practice. How do we improve the practice? How do we find out ways and ways to reach, unique populations or, meet unique situations that may exist? And the community knows that best. So how can we support with the funding to do that? How can we really get to some of our interests in regards to ACF around improving child well-being? How can we get to improve family self-sufficiency? So when we think about the reasons of why we put the $75 million into healthy marriages, because we really want to see how can we strengthen communities, how can we build communities, how can we reach families where they are to meet their unique needs, how can we allow communities to work together through partnerships to really think about how you integrate this work into the community at large, and really, how to really see what really works, whether it be through research projects or whether it's through just getting information through success stories from the community on what works, and really to strengthen this field. We know that families need help. We know that families, want to do better. We know that families want to be strong. And one way we can do that is through this funding. So I think it's a really good opportunity for the federal government to really think about ways to do that. And this program allows us to do that.
Thank you. Great. One of the programs that's funded through OFA, through this funding, is the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse, and that's represented here today, as I mentioned, by Kenny. Before we talk to Kenny, I'd like to have Jen ask a question of our viewers.
Thanks, Robin. So what we'll be seeing is a poll question to gauge what our audience may guess the answer to this question is. How many single fathers are there in the U.S.? And you'll see as this pops up, we have a range for you to choose from: 250,000 to 500,000, 500,000 to a million, 1 million to 1.5 million, or 1.5 million to 2 million. I'll give people just a quick minute to take their best guess again about how many single fathers there are in the U.S. And right now it looks like our top response is between 1 million and 1.5. About 37% of our audience seems to think that that is the correct response.
Interesting. The actual answer is 1.96 million single fathers, single head of household fathers in the U.S., which is approximately 16% of all single parents. It's interesting, Kenny, because many times when we think about fatherhood services, we think about the non-custodial father and how to help them be more involved in the lives of their children. But as we just heard, there are a lot of fathers who are in the home with their children, and in some cases, they are the only parent in the home with their children. Tell us a little bit about the resources that the Clearinghouse has that is supportive of those fathers to help those dads be better dads.
I think it's important to allow people to kind of understand the number with respect to single fathers. And that when we talk about single fathers, it's not an indicator of those who are engaged in fatherhood, it's an indicator of relationship. Just like it is with single moms, it's an indicator of where their parenting resources are coming from with respect to who's living in the home. And to know that that number is what it is today, it just shows that there's an increasing issue that we have to deal with respect to relationships, which is why I'm so happy to be here today, to get folks to kind of understand that the work of the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse is a complementary and necessary critical work to move alongside with the National Resource Center. And so the clearinghouse itself, much like Sharice just kind of laid out for you a few minutes ago, really begins to allow us to create an umbrella platform for the work of responsible fatherhood across the country, and ensuring that we do provide the kinds of resources that men need to be adequate and responsible, healthy, loving fathers in the lives of their children, and to be able to receive the kinds of services that they need to do so. The Ad Council did a survey about a year ago and found that 97% of all dads in this country say that when their children were born, it was the best day of their lives. That says something. It says that fathers are just and have the biggest desires to be in the lives of their children, that where they stumble and where they have problems is in access, services, and sometimes some of the other stuff as well. But it's really their ability to be able to kind of understand. And I think a lot of times we often believe that parents, not both moms and dad, receive a manual when children are born. Neither of us receive a manual. And we do the best that we can given the resources that we have and given what we were taught growing up to be great parents in our lives. And so the Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse does just that for not only non-custodial dads, but dads across the continuum of fatherhood, from everyone to the extreme who's never had a relationship with their children in their lives, all the way to the guy who's doing the best he could possibly do, working, feeding his children, shelter, health care, everything. And all of those parents, from one extreme to the other, at some point in their lives need a service. And I hope that that's what we do with the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse for them.
Fabulous. Thank you. So following up on that, what I hear you saying is that we need to think about these families as unique individuals, and everybody's situation might be different, so we need to think differently about what services that they need, which I think fits very well with the work associated with working with African American individuals, couples, and families toolkit that you worked on for us, Dr. Slack. It attempts to address broader issues affecting African American families. So why did you think that it was so important to recognize cultural nuances when serving families?
Well, first, let me say I'm ecstatic to be alive, to see this day come where we get the opportunity to talk specifically about the nuances of what it means to be black in America, and to be able to just say that, and to recognize that being black is okay, and that there are individual needs that black people have, or as many people like to say, African American. I still prefer black. But, you know, politically, it's African American, but for me it's black, because it incorporates the fact that blackness is not something that is just American. It is something that spans the globe, and there's a oneness that is not often embraced as we deal with people in America. So the nuances that have come about as a result of being black in America is, it's really hard to explain in a minute. But let me take a minute. When you don't understand something, you're afraid of it. And when you're afraid of something, you don't explore it. And if a person is not understood, then they are realigned or misaligned. And in America, black families have been redefined, misdefined, and misaligned. And when we talk about including them in the big picture of the marriage movement, which many of us have been a part of for years, we had to recognize that there was some curricula that just did not jive with the experience of black people in America. And just because you change that at the end and say for black couples, the content still was not sensitive in many ways to what the reality of the people of color had experienced. And so, you know, when we look at the toolkit, we look at the realm of history and some of the influences that are not so obvious that people have had to accept as the way it is, but also we're trying to help them to understand that though that is the way it is, there are some tools that you can learn to manage the way it is and make it into the way that you'd like for it to be. And those nuances are not the same with every culture. And so cultural sensitivity is very important, and embracing the fact that it is okay to be black and to have had the experience that black people have had, and that my relationship is not going to be a cookie cutter approach, and the broad sweep of things is not the way that it can be dealt with. It has to be dealt with based on my perception, my reality, and my experience.
So just to follow up on that, in the toolkit you talk about a concept called code switching as it relates to communication. Tell us a little bit about what that is and why it's important for social service providers to understand that concept.
Having been a social service provider for years, I recognize code switching I recognize code switching even in the culture, within the culture. As I was dealing with a black person, sometimes they would start saying things that they knew that I didn't know anything about. But what they were doing is they were reverting back to their comfort zone, and they were highlighting the fact that I was not understanding them at that time, that I was not making a connection. So what they did, they reverted to speaking in a language that they understood, but that they knew that I did not understand. So it was their defense mechanism to embrace their humanity and to accept that this is who I am. But then if I were to then show them that I was concerned by, like, asking a follow-up question, what do you mean by that? That embraces their humanity and brings them back in and helps them to know that I'm concerned about them, that I'm not so concerned about my job. And I think a lot of times service providers are so company-minded that they forget that they're dealing with real human lives and people that are dealing with tough issues. And so code switching is a defense mechanism a lot of times. It's a way of embracing my humanity, and sometimes it's a way of disengaging. And it's sometimes when, this is my most recent understanding of it, sometimes it is to regain ground. If you're talking to me like I don't understand something, if I can code switch and change the vernacular, I can rise right back above you and let you know without even telling you that you're not as smart as I am. Now, I mean, not me, just people. So, yeah, so I think a lot of times service providers need to be sensitive to the fact that none of us know all of it, and that everybody has their own, and they have a right to embrace their own experience, and that we should not belittle that experience, and that we should help them to embrace it and to help to teach us about it.
Thank you. Kenny, did you want to add something?
Yeah, you know, I think also code switching is also seeking a place of comfort. We see it in languages. We see it as we deal with Latinos around the country. You know, when Rosario talked earlier about using the term black and encompassing the world experience, it's just not African Americans from Africa, but it's people from Haiti, it's people from Ghana, it's people from London. And at every instance that you meet them, they look for a space of comfort. So even amongst friends of us who happen to be black, just as a for instance, if there are two people, one from Haiti and then the other from Haiti, who didn't know each other, and then in a connection they find out they're from, automatically they start speaking their own language because it's a place of comfort for them, and it brings them back to a place that they both now understand that they're a culture within a culture, having to understand both of them and also knowing when it's appropriate to move in either way, either one of the lanes.
You guys make an excellent point that every individual, just because they are black, doesn't share the same experience. And so we do need to be mindful of the uniqueness even among the race as well. So it's an excellent point. So moving into another area of conversation, I have another poll question for you. This poll question we are not going to give you the answer to. We are going to let you see a wonderful brief video that will answer the question after the poll question is complete. Jen?
So our poll question should be popping up any minute now for us, and it's what percentage of African American women have married? And again, this is a range, so your best guess. It's 10 to 15%, 30 to 40%, 50 to 60%, or 80 to 90%.
How are we doing?
Misconceptions about black marriages can create barriers in providing safety net services. Get the facts so you can better serve your clients.
We've been married for 40 years.
Raised 3 kids together.
It wasn't always easy.
But we always knew we had each other.
Nearly 1/5 of low-income black couples are married. These marriages are commonly overlooked in social service circles and infrequently represented in media.
We've been best friends since we were kids, and I am thrilled to be her maid of honor.
Yes, I'm so excited. I get married in 2 weeks.
Marriage still holds considerable symbolic significance among black adults and in low-income communities.
I'm a single mom. It's tough though. It would be easier if I had a husband to help.
One adult can care for a child. 2 adults partnered in a healthy marriage are better able than one adult to provide time and needed resources designed to enhance children's development. Married parents are more likely to be better educated, earn more, live in more stable housing, and have a more supportive partner than single parents. Supporting black couples and encouraging healthy relationships starts with recognizing the myths for what they are, just myths. Strong families are the foundation of strong communities. Get the facts to help families move to self-sufficiency. For more information on healthy marriage education skills, visit www.healthymarriageandfamilies.org, info@healthymarriageandfamilies.org, 1-866-916-4672.
So the majority of our viewers selected 30 to 40%. And as you saw in the video, the actual percentage is 57% of black women have been married. So it's interesting that to some degree the myth continues. So following that, Tara, a lot of your research has been focused on relationships and the African American community. What does the research tell us about the general view of marriage within the African American community, and how do these views affect relationship patterns?
Sure. Thank you so much for the invitation to be a part of this wonderful webinar. The research has been pretty clear in that in the community, African American communities still hold a very strong symbolic significance for marriage, and that at one point or another, when people are ready, they do desire to marry. And I think I want to emphasize when they are ready. And the means by which people are ready are different than they used to be. It used to be a function of age. It used to be a function of perhaps finishing high school. And now, the bar is really, raised quite a bit, where people want to marry after perhaps they've finished a college education, or perhaps after they moved into a home, or secured other financial assets, or perhaps purchased a car. And so those bars are different than they were in my grandparents' generation, where you bought those things together. That's why we got married. Today it's, no, we need to set those things up first in order to perhaps stabilize the marriage. And so in that respect, the pathways to marriage have changed, that they're still very present in the African American community, but they are a little bit delayed. And so that is what the impact has been on delaying marriage, in hopes that perhaps it'll be a little bit more stable when people do marry.
You did fabulous work on the fact sheet that supports the companion video that we just saw, and another product that you did for us on the separation, unique patterns of separation among black couples. What was the most interesting piece that you came across when you were working on that product?
Sure, that was definitely an interesting product to work on, and so just to be clear to the audience, I still publish under my maiden name, Tara Hurt, even though I'm Tara Jordan now. The most interesting thing to me about the particular fact sheet focused on black separation were just the complexities that come about when a couple decides to separate, and how the length of separation can really place individuals at risk, children at risk, and perhaps the overall family at risk. And so, you know, sometimes marital separation is needed. You need some time to work things out, to perhaps recalibrate things. But that period and that length of that separation really is kind of murky. And people have to really work hard at deciding how you're going to manage that if you're now in different households, certainly around children and visitation and custody, and it certainly has an impact on individual well-being in terms of dealing with the psychological effects of now I'm separated, the financial concerns around now, you know, two households, or certainly less income coming in if one person has left the household. And so just the way in which the literature really highlighted the fact that that is now a new period of risk. Quite honestly, as a scholar, was very interesting for me to think about, very provocative to think about.
Great, thank you. So Anissa, you and Rosario developed a basic training for couples series together. Can you give us an example of how this curriculum actually reflects cultural competency, which we've heard is so important, and as it relates to African American couples, and why, again, that's so important?
Well, let me start by thanking you again for having me as a part of this panel. And I think part of what it is that Rosario and I found is that when we were doing work, and we were doing work, direct services with families and couples, we were looking at curriculum that we felt didn't meet the needs of the couples and the families that we were doing work with. In fact, they were asking us for more information and really asking us, where is the curriculum for black people? Where is the curriculum that addresses our needs and concerns? And we were looking at each other saying, yeah, where is it? You know, where's the curriculum? Until finally we were together and somebody said, well, why don't you all do it? And so we were like, yeah, why don't we do this? And, you know, we did our research and we looked at across the country what were the needs of African American couples and families in terms of a curriculum to help them learn how to form and sustain healthy marriages and healthy relationships. And one of the things that we found, which is our the first week of our curriculum, is called Why Marriage? Because too often for a lot of people in the black community, if you ask them, you know, why marriage, they say, we want to know that too. What's the big deal about marriage? You know, why is marriage so important? And we wanted to have that as our foundation, to help people understand why marriage is important, what the benefits of marriage are for men, for women, for children. How does marriage benefit your community? How does marriage benefit your faith institution? And we could not find any other curriculum that started out with that kind of foundation. And so that's how ours starts out, by helping people understand why marriage is even important. Because if you don't understand why marriage is important, you may learn how to communicate better, you may be able to manage your conflict, you may be able to commit to something, but then after a while, I'm done with it, I'm moving on to the next person, because you really don't have an understanding of why marriage is important, especially for men who want to know, what's the big deal? I'm doing really good by myself out here. You know, why should I get married? And so we help men understand the benefits of being married, all the benefits and what it does for men. What does it do for women, children? How do your children benefit by having married parents? The community where you live. I tell people, okay, you may not want to get married, but you need to live where the married people live, because they get better services from the county or the government or the city. They get better services. So you can stay single, but live where married people live.
Good point.
And so I help people understand that as well. And so that's one of the nuances I think that's really critical in our work, is that we start off by talking about why marriage.
Great. Rosario, you want to add anything?
It's so hard to add anything to what Nisa says. It was just important, like I said earlier, that as we perused, and we were at Smart Marriages, and there were like 1,000 curricula. And at that point, I believe that Lorraine Blackman was the only person that even said the word black. And, you know, and so other people were trying, they would say, well, you can tweak it. You can just take any curriculum and tweak it. But the problem of tweaking is often the tweaker. And if you don't know what it is that you're trying to accomplish, if you don't know where it is that people that you're dealing with come from, it's hard to tweak it so that it can be a successful curriculum. And so we determined that we wanted to reflect the voices of the people that we had run into across the country. They told us what were the issues, which is why we call our conflict issue conflict management, not conflict resolution, because there's still a lot of people in the black community who are dealing with conflicts from 40 and 50 years ago,
right.
60 and 70 years ago. And so what we try to teach people the skills that will help them to manage conflict even when it doesn't get resolved. And so that was another one of the nuances that I thought was important for.
Excellent point. So you heard it here, folks. Rosario says, tweakers beware.
Not tweeters.
Tweakers beware. So you make an interesting point about all of this and the importance of being culturally competent and who is doing the tweaking on this material. Those are excellent points. And I think that kind of leads us to our next piece. I want to talk to Kenny just a little bit. The Resource Center, we promote the integration of relationship education skills into service delivery systems as part of a strategy to serve families more holistically. And the Fatherhood Clearinghouse is doing a really interesting project, an interesting strategy for integrating positive messaging into communities. And they're doing so through barbershops. So Kenny, tell us a little bit about the Fatherhood Buzz and why barbershops?
You know, that's a great segue, because just on the tail end of what both Nisa and Rosario was just talking about, you know, there's an addition to cultural competency, and that's cultural reality. Mm-hmm. And so as we talk about the 1 in 5, there is still the 4 in 5. And we have to talk about the 4 and 5 too, because a lot of what we have to deal with is driven by the 4, not the 1. Even though media tends to focus on the 4, the behavior is still driven by the 4, and we have to look at that. And so much of what we know about the 4, fortunately for us, is found in barbershops and beauty salons. That's why we're there. Historically, you know, in the black community, for as long as, you know, there's been clippers and guys have wanted to get their hair, you know, tight before they went to the club, you know, on Friday night. And, you know, yeah. And so, I'm talking about code switching. And so, you know, there's, you know, barbershops for particularly men historically has always been a place of safe comfort, to talk about their issues, to share their concerns, to release their frustrations, no matter how wrong they are. Mm-hmm. And part of the Fatherhood Buzz effort for us was to begin to move into this comfortable space with them, not to intrude that space. Mm-hmm. And so what we wanted to do was, as a clearinghouse, because we had the closest proximity to great information, good information, accurate information, what we wanted to do is just to go into barbershops and change the source of information. We didn't want to change the context of the conversation, because you're not going to, we laugh about this all the time. They talk about child support in the barbershops. The question is, what are they saying about it in there? True. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to go into barbershops through Fatherhood Buzz to be able to give these barbers great information so that they can give their clients great information so that they can have great outcomes and improve their relationships. So we go into the barbershops and we change what we affectionately say, we change the buzz every quarter. And so we've done education, we've done co-parenting, we've done we've done health. And fortunately, this month, we're actually doing healthy relationship. And that is doing tip cards. We have 22 cities now to which we have barbers actively engaged in Fatherhood Buzz, where we send materials with tips on it, just in terms of helping barbers stimulate and change the course of their conversation. So they don't have to be all articulate about they don't have to be a doctor in the conversation. But at least we want them to start from a safe frame, from a nice foundation. And so even if they have some issues, you know, that they're going to talk about the issues, let's at least start where there's some good information and then move forward. And so we're very happy about the Fatherhood Buzz effort. And if anyone around the country wants to get involved in it, just simply go to fatherhood.gov, go to the Fatherhood Buzz page, and you can apply and sign up to be either a community partner in a community and or a barbershop in a community. And that's any barbershop in any community.
Perfect. Rosario, you wanted to add?
As the other person up here who would go to a barber, I'd like to weigh in. I think it is genius that that was a good move. Because my barber actually goes to my church. And with me being his pastor, you would think that I'd be the one giving all the advice and having all of the input and the influence. But when I'm sitting in the chair, he can just ask me one question, and he can hear it on Sunday morning being preached. Because it's just something therapeutic about you surrendering your head to somebody else. It's like, this guy could cut my neck off. He could really mess me up, you know, for whatever event I'm trying to look for. So there's a lot of power there, and I think it's just important to help barbers to know what kind of influence they have and help them with their own relationships so that they then can be testimonial about what they went through and how they've come through it when they hear people complaining. Because inevitably the complaints are going to come. And I just think that was a great move. I just wanted to highlight.
Thank you. Sharice?
Can I go back to the tweaker? Is that okay? Well, the reason why that's so important to me is because sometimes we don't recognize how some of the images in our mind as practitioners impact how we deliver services to our consumer. And sometimes I think some people may call it like structural racism, where norms and beliefs are a part of our organization and that it impacts how we make decisions. So even when you talked about how you develop curricula to really address the real issues and the conversations that we learn from our grantees about what really goes on in communities to dispel myths and to let people know that you need to, you know, touch that person where they are and not make all these assumptions, and how even if you're black, you may have some stereotypical beliefs about blacks and what they look like. So it was really refreshing even to just listen to you all talk, because this makes you reflect on, how do I really make my decisions? Do I make them based on, you know, what the organization says alone? Do I make them based on hearing from that person and really understanding who they are? Do I make it based on what the last data report said that came out? You know, so how do I make decisions so that really the conversation about what happens with the person across the desk from you becomes even more important? Because if you make your decisions just on what you think or what you heard and not really dealing with that individual, you're really kind of reinforcing some of the things that you're trying to dispel. So thank you.
I think that's part of the value of what the Resource Center has to offer: research about black people by black people. So that you can feel comfortable when you're reading the research that Tara knows what she's talking about. I mean, you don't have to wonder, is she in some ivory tower somewhere writing this research about African American or black couples and she's never been one or seen one or talked to any. That in fact she knows what she's talking about. And I think that's part of the value of, as I said, the Resource Center and all of this research and the toolkit for those of you who are interested in doing work with black couples in the African American community. The resources are here to help you be very successful in that realm.
Perfect. While you have the mic, Nisa, why don't you tell us a little bit about Black Marriage Day, since that's coming up.
Yeah, while I have the mic, Black Marriage Day. So there's this thing called Black Marriage Day. And, you know, I got tired of hearing all of the negative things about black people and their marriages. Low marriage rates, they don't want to get married, high divorce rates, high out-of-wedlock childbirth rates. It's this whole litany of negativity. And I was speaking at a Smart Marriages conference and said, you know what, there needs to be a Black Marriage Day. There needs to be an opportunity where we can stop the negativity and start on something very positive and celebrate marriages in the black community. Because believe it or not, there are a lot of them out there that are incredible. They're very positive. They have endured hell and high water, and they're still maintaining. But they get no attention. You don't see them in the media. But so we need to celebrate them. So conference over, workshop done, get back home. I get a call about a month later from Essence Magazine. And the reporter says, I was in your workshop at Smart Marriages. When is Black Marriage Day? And I said, when is what? And she said, when is Black Marriage Day? I said, let me call you right back. Went on the calendar. Oh, my God, when is Black Marriage Day? You know, picked the 4th Sunday in March, got a website going, called her back and said, Black Marriage Day is going to be in March, and here's the information. And Essence Magazine did the first little article about Black Marriage Day in November 2002. Well, it's just been going strong ever since then, because people really want to celebrate what is happening in the Black community and wanted some motivation, wanted some organization, wanted an impetus in which to be able to do it. So this past year, we were in over 300 communities, and I say that communities as opposed to cities because some large cities have 1, 2, 3, and 4 different celebrations. And so there's all around the country. People are very eager to do it. They have incredible celebrations. One church, I think it was Cincinnati one year, had the men of that church created a CD called Why I Love My Wife, where each of the men in that church spoke to their wife saying, why I love my wife. Not a dry eye in the church, of course, when that was over. People have dinner dances, they have workshops, they have Tom Thumb weddings where they have children dress up as a bride and groom, because in a lot of Black communities, these children grow up, they don't know anybody that's married, they've never been to a wedding, and so for them it's like, oh my God, we're getting all dressed up. And so they're putting the roots of marriage in children at a very young age. People, like I said, people do very, very incredible things. In Dallas, an organization called Anthem does something where they induct couples every year into the Black Marriage Day Hall of Fame. These couples are nominated by their friends and family. Anthem gets a professional photographer to take their picture, and they create an exhibit in an African American museum of these couples. They take this exhibit on tour. It goes to City Hall every year. All of these couples, it gets put up in Love Field Airport, where tens of thousands of people come through the airport every year. They see these pictures of these beautiful couples, and there's keys to success. So it's a cultural movement to help normalize marriage in the Black community, to let people know it happens. There's some fabulous couples that are married, and they're doing wonderful. And so we're very encouraged about Black Marriage Day. It's March 23rd this year. For more information, go to blackmarriageday.com and get involved.
Thank you. So you just mentioned some successes, and I want to talk a little bit about that before we open it up to our audience for questions. I want to start with you, Cherise. The Healthy Marriage Initiative supports demonstration grants across the country, and they're designed really to identify and cultivate some of these promising practices that you see out there. So with that in mind, can you give me some examples of some what we're learning about interesting approaches in how to serve families?
Thank you. I think we just heard one, because I think we are now recognizing that it's not just top down or sideways in. It's all along that spectrum of, or even a continuum of everyone has a role that they must play in making families stronger, and everyone has a role that they can play to make Black families stronger. So even participating in, Black Marriage Day or whatever it may be is one approach to get the community thinking. So that's something that we've learned. And that's a success, not necessarily funded by OFA, but it's a success when we think about community development. Another success is their partnerships. People who may not traditionally partner around this issue are partnering with our grantees. You can take a local social services agency. They may want their families that they serve to participate in a program like this, and because we do have these grantees throughout the country, they have an opportunity to refer or to link people with related in partnerships that they may not traditionally be able to fund. So you have partners in the community that can do marriage education or whatever it may be. We also are seeing integration into some of the systems. We were at a site visit recently, and it was a correctional facility. and they have integrated this conversation into the work they're doing. And it's not that funding is not needed, but when you integrate, you sustain the message. And we don't want it just to be you're getting grant money for 3 years and then it goes away. We really want to see good integration into systems so that change can be forever, and we're paying attention to the things that really matter, and in this situation regarding the black family. We're also seeing folks leveraging money and resources to make sure that families have opportunity to participate in the sessions or in the classes and things like that. So that makes it so exciting when you see that the community is taking this and they're taking it to another level in which they're really paying close, intentional attention to this issue and saying we want to do it right. We don't want to do harm. And I think we've been in situations where sometimes we felt like we didn't know what to do, like what you just described. But now we have a chance to say, are we doing it right? You know, what is the research telling us? What are we learning? So, you know, that really is the success that we see in government, is that the communities and our grantees and our partners have taken this on. They recognize how important this is, and they're really the ones that are making the difference in the lives of families and children, and it only can be a win-win.
Great, thank you. So back to you guys, Rosario and Nisa. As we know, this work can sometimes be a little bit hard to measure, but as direct service providers, you've had the opportunity to look in the faces of the families whose lives have been changed by this work. Can you give me a couple of examples that come to mind?
I'll go first. You know, one of the stories that sticks in my mind in my classes is the couple. I don't know if anyone saw Black in America 2 on CNN's Black in America 2. They did a segment on our work in terms of strengthening families in the black community. And I worked with a couple that was on the brink of divorce. They had been married for 22 years and were on the brink of divorce. They had an issue with dating in terms of parenting. So the mom came from a single-parent household. The father grew up in a two-parent household. Now, if you're in a single-parent household, you know mom's rule. Whatever mom says, it is the absolute gospel. There's nobody else that knows anything better than what mom knows. So that's how you grow up. But if you're in a two-parent family and there's a dad around, you know the complete opposite, that what dad says is law. And so they had these different backgrounds, and so when it came time for dating, the daughter said, well, she's like 14, 15, she's ready to date. The mom was like, oh, it's okay, it'll be all right. The dad was like, hell no. I've been a 15-year-old boy. I know what they're after. I know what they want to do. And the mom was like, oh, it'll be fine. I trust her. And he said, it's not her, it's him. And the mother let the daughter date. The dad could not believe it. It created such a gap and a big whatever mountain in their relationship, because he felt like his authority had been usurped. He felt like he did not have the right to exercise his authority over his children. And so every other issue that came up, he just let her deal with it. He was disengaging slowly in the relationship, and they came to our classes. And in front of live cameras, you know, we were able to really help them to see that you can work together as a couple and resolve these issues, and that in a marriage, you have to let a man be a man. I mean, it can't be that you're going to be mother and father, everything, because when you're a single parent and you grow up seeing mom do everything, you're very used to her doing everything, and it's difficult sometimes for women to understand that in a marriage, you have to work together. You really don't have to do everything. There's somebody else there to do a whole lot of the things that need to be done. And so, thankfully, like I said, in live camera, you know, they were able to work out their problems. And if you see the Black in America 2 segment, they were very distant in the beginning. But by the end, we had a graduation. Rosario was our guest speaker. They were in tears because they spoke about how this class saved their marriage. And so that's a success story any of you can watch on, I think it's on YouTube.
Everything's on YouTube, isn't it? Yeah. Rosario, you want to add something?
Just a couple of things. I want to highlight one fact that Nisa probably doesn't even know about. On the day of the graduation, I had the opportunity to get there early, and this guy and his wife were the first people that were there. And I didn't know who he was. I had not talked to him, had not seen him, and I just spoke to him. And I said, are you here for the graduation? And he said, yeah. He said, what about you? I said, yeah. And so then I said, well, you know, my normal questioning, how long have you been married and all of these things? And he said, 22 years, 21 years. And I said, thank you. thank you for providing that example for our community. And I just went on and on and on, telling him how important it was for him to have, paved the way for people like me who were coming behind him, and all of that. And then when he got up to talk, Nisa then let me know that this was the couple that was being highlighted. My point is that a lot of times we don't have to do what we think we know we're doing. We just got to do what's right. Just tell people, thank you for your example. And another thing that I thought about is that now another success that we're having is that we have black researchers who can come out of the closet now and say, let me speak for my people. Let me give it to you, not from a skewed perspective, but from an informed perspective, where there's still some things that you may think that you're seeing that that's not really what you're seeing. And so one more thing that I'm going to say. I think that the whole issue of quantifying is very difficult. So I quantify based on people's reports. And as people continue to say, we're still doing those skills, or if they're in the class and they say, now, he's not doing whatever, just those things show that there's been an increase in awareness and an attempt to succumb to the teaching. So just as I've watched person after person after person who has said, thank you, we're doing better, or we're still struggling here, they're at least at a point where they feel free to talk about it and that they have a frame of reference of someone that they can speak to it about.
Awesome. Excellent point. Thank you. So I want to open it up to our audience for questions.
Thanks, Robin. So this is Jen again. I'm going to voice. One of the first questions we got through touches on a couple of things I think we've talked about, but an individual said that a lot of the people they're working with feel that marriage is out of their reach. And could the panelists speak a little bit to that as an issue and ways to make a difference on that?
Okay, who wants to start?
I'm glad that was the first question, because I've had this nugget in my back of my head and couldn't find a place to drop it. Now you gave me a place to drop it.
Did you put in the question, Kenny?
Yeah, it's going to be in the question. It's definitely going to be in the question. It is the question. And so about a year and a half ago, we were funded, Fathers Incorporated was funded by the Open Society Foundation to revisit the Moynihan Report, the 1965 report that talked about the case for Negro action in black families in this country. Nisa was one of the people that I interviewed, and a couple of other people from around the country. But one of the people that I interviewed was Dr. Timothy Smeating at the University of Madison, Wisconsin. And he said something to me that day that just struck me that day and continues to strike me and is right in line with that question as to why people believe or think that marriage is out of reach. And he says, why do we have such a high threshold for marriage, yet such a low threshold for having children? That somehow we buy into the fact that it is so much more easier to have children than it is to get married. And oftentimes we take this conversation of marriage and we disconnect it from the conversation of children, when marriage and relationship is directly connected and critical to the success of our children. So whenever people ask that question, why is marriage so difficult and it's out of reach, you should start asking yourself some other questions, which is really, what are you trying to accomplish in life? And what path are you trying to take to accomplish that? And what has been your lessons? What have been your pathways to which you've seen that leads you to believe that the threshold of marriage is so high that it's unobtainable for you? And I believe that it all kind of goes back to, what are the nature of your relationships? And I think that when you begin to ask those questions, I think that what we find in our communities oftentimes, that we end up finding ourselves as parents as a result of situationships, not relationships. Situationships is when we become parents as a result of a situation that we happen to be in. I met her one night, we hooked up, that's a good word, code switching. We hooked up, right? And 9 months later, the baby showed up. And now we don't know how to relate because we were never in a relationship. We were only in a situationship. And so it is very difficult for someone who is engaged deeply in situationships to understand what marriage really means when they don't also know what relationships mean. And I think that's a higher dialogue that we have to begin to ask that particular questions for folks.
Thank you, Kenny. Excellent point. Do we have another question?
Sure, we do actually. Someone asked about the importance of integrating marriage and fatherhood programs working together, since we've touched on both parenting and marriage conversation.
Rosario, you want to take that?
Yes. First, I like the word situationships. I never heard it. So we'll be code switching with that one. But I think it's very important, as Kenny was articulating just now, to understand that there should be a marriage, no, all pun intended, between healthy marriage and responsible fatherhood programming, because as we raise the bar of expectation, we can change the ship that we see, whether it be a situationship or a relationship. We can change the whole shipyard by putting the two of them together and utilizing the best from each world. Responsible fatherhood is hard when you don't have a relationship with the mama. Period. You can be as responsible as you want it, but if you don't have access to the child, and in the majority of the cases, the mother is the primary
gatekeeper.
Yeah, that's a good word. So you can have all the relationship skills in the world, don't have the opportunity to carry them out, you're still not gonna be successful. One more thing I want to say quickly. I was doing a fatherhood class in Chattanooga at a hospital, and we took a break. And as I walked out of the hospital room, or the training room, this guy was walking past, and he said, "Man," I said, "How you doing?" He said, "Man, I'm excited, man. My old lady just had a baby." I said, "Oh, you have an old lady?" He said, "Well, my girl had a baby." And I said, "Oh, that's really, really good. I'm not going to give all of it to you. I'll just tell you the end of it." I said, "Are you married? How long you been married?" He said, "Oh, we're not married." I said, "Well, guy, let me tell you something. You see the way you feel right now? If you don't marry that woman, in 2 years, you're not going to have this same feeling that you're having right here." Now, to me, that's a good way to integrate my knowledge of research and dealing with a human being. I didn't have to quote who studied it. I knew it. And so from the responsible fatherhood perspective, I knew that he was probably not married in the beginning. But I also knew from the healthy marriage perspective, if he did not get married, what was going to happen.
Excellent. Sure, go ahead.
And I just want to kind of say something in response to that. It sounds like I think that we're trying to change the narrative, by putting good information out there to really talk about who we are, that it is attainable, that we can plan, that we can have strong relationships, not buying into the myths and the stereotypes and the images that we may see in the news. We may see images in books or whatever, but really an opportunity to change the narrative. And I think that's what I was most impressed about by just listening to the panelists today, is that we're changing the narrative. And how powerful can that be for a group of people? So thank you all.
I want to add one quick thing. It's not until we give young people information about marriage and the benefits of it that they even are in a position to consider it. I do a class for pregnant and parenting teens, and did a class for them and talked to them about the same thing, why marriage and the benefits of marriage. Well, about a year later, I saw one of the couples that I had worked with. He said, "Oh, Miss Muhammad, so good to see you." I said, "Well, how are you? And Robert, how are you all doing?" She said, "We got married." I was like, "You did what?" She said, "We got married. You said it was good." And I was like, "Yeah, but I didn't know you were really listening like that." I mean, it's my same spiel that I give to everybody, but they were really listening. At 18 years old, they had a baby. They were listening, and they got married. And she said, "We don't know anybody that's married, but we heard you talk about it. We did our own little Google search on marriage, and we got married. And we're happy." And I was so glad to hear that, because for a lot of young people, there's no one that introduces the concept of marriage to them. There's no one at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 20, I can keep going, talking to them about marriage. You know, I ask people when I'm speaking around the country, how many have seen the movie 27 Dresses? Very funny movie, young white girl. She had been in 27 weddings, had a closet full of bridesmaids' dresses. So then I also ask, how many of you know 27 young black women that are married? Oh. Nobody raises their hands. Okay, let's lower the number. How many of you know 20 young black women that are married? Nobody raises their hands. Okay, 15. 10. 5. It's a cultural divide. My daughter went to Spelman College, one of the best colleges for young black women. They graduate being able to change the world. She does not have 5 married friends at 26. I'm thankful she got married. You know, I mean, it's a mother's worry. Is my daughter going to get married? You know, but it's a cultural divide. And unless someone is talking to our young people about marriage, not just hooking up, not just having a baby, but the M word. What is going on with you and marriage? Have you considered marriage? Because if not, then there are serial situationships. There are serial relationships, and then children come about as a result of that, and then we have these issues. So no one is talking to our young middle schoolers about marriage. You know, there's a middle school in D.C. that has a child care center because they have pregnant teens in middle school. But nobody is giving them information about marriage, and it's really a travesty that seriously needs to be addressed.
Okay. Yeah, one of the, in my experience, I did most of my work in married couples was when I was in Georgia, and I think these programs are so critical, not just for the programming around relationship skills and marriage, you know, socialization that we've talked about, but really about building that community. And how many couples we worked with in Georgia said, we either don't know anybody or we don't trust them to support us as being a married couple. And for me, my vision of our community is that has really changed. The village has really changed where we don't have that core group of married couples that people feel like they can reach out to and connect to the way in which perhaps it used to be a generation ago. And so in addition to the reasons why these programs were developed, I think a byproduct of that is just building a community where people know where other married couples are in the event you want to go out to dinner. Hey, you just want to get together and play cards. But just connect as married couples and build that community around. All married couples need that support. And so these programs are really critical for assisting with that.
The other thing, too, as a man, my wife is just a great way to start a sentence. You know, my wife and I, you know, went to, you know, my wife and I, it's you know, for a guy, it's just a great way to start a sentence. So if you don't do it for no other reason, send it like my wife and I. My wife is just a great way to start a sentence. If you can start it as a man with those 2 sentences, you're doing something good.
We've got time for one more question for the panel.
And this question is related. It's how do you incorporate the healthy into healthy marriage and relationship education as we introduce this concept to people so we don't fall into getting married just to get married?
I mean, I'm going to give this to Rosario, too. We can give this from 2 different perspectives. I think, number one of the things that we do when we talk about why marriage, we talk about what marriage is, and we talk about all the healthy aspects of marriage. So that we're not just talking about marriage just to get married, but we're talking about, and we believe in marriage. That's number one. We believe in marriage. Now, every marriage is not healthy 100% of the time. So, you know, for a couple that may be struggling, you know, we're not going to dismiss their marriage just because they're struggling and may not be considered totally healthy. You know, every marriage needs work. Every marriage needs support. And so at some point in time, you can take a picture of anybody's marriage and say, oh, my God, what's going on there? But a marriage is not a snapshot. It's a long, plain movie. And we want couples to stick around to get to the end. And so healthy marriage today, healthier tomorrow, healthiest the next day, but it may start out unhealthy. And so we take couples where they are and help them to get where we want them to be.
In that work, one of the things that we highlight is we ask people to talk about the marriages in their family. Talk about what have you seen, which is where we get our information on how to be married. And then how do you feel about what you've seen and what do you want? And so healthiness is about habits. When you create the habits, when you become the person who is doing the right thing, you will possibly attract a person who wants to do the right thing. And so then you can build skills around that. And like, it's not to judge that, it's not perfect, but it's how to sustain a relationship with another person in a healthy way.
When I think about healthy marriage, I think about not equating marriage with all marriages. And so, much of the research has talked about that the quality of the marriage is just as critical to think about as the structure of the marriage. And in particular, if we focus on the impact of low-functioning marriages on children. So when children are brought up in homes where things are not going well for extended periods of time, that really does impact their development. And so it's not just about being married, but it is about working together as a partnership, investing in that, the way in which you'd invest in anything that is important to you and that you're committed to, and understanding that just getting across the aisle or just getting to the courthouse is not enough. Yeah. But it's about continuing to put in the work so that you can have the highest quality marriage that you can, because otherwise that conflict is not only not good for kids, it's not good for individuals either. You see an increase in mental health concerns, certainly physical health concerns, and that's not what we're talking about here. We really are talking about healthy marriages.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to all of my panelists for this very thought-provoking conversation today. For those of you who are viewing this, I hope that today's presentation has been thought-provoking. I hope that you've heard some things today that will make you want to pull down those resources that are on the computer in front of you, download those products that we've talked about today and read them. But most importantly, what I want you to do is to continue the discussion in your own communities. This should be the starting point, not the ending point. What we'd like you to focus on are two areas. One, what is your organization doing to improve the way it serves families, particularly African American families in your community? What's your organization doing and what can it do better? And the second challenge for you today is, what are you as an individual doing? What are you doing to make a difference? You heard Rosario tell a story about asking a young man about marriage in the hallway after a child was born. We are all in situations where we have an opportunity to influence people around us, whether that's modeling healthy marriages or sharing information with folks in our own families about healthy relationships and healthy relationship skills. So I challenge you to continue the discussions in your communities and to take personal responsibility for the people in your lives around you, in your family, and in your workplace, and encourage them to access the resources necessary to strengthen relationships or to know what healthy relationships are if they don't know what they are. The Resource Center is here to support you. If you do take advantage of the opportunity to continue the discussions within your agencies, I hope you'll email us at info@healthymarriageandfamilies.org. and let us know what you've done. We'll have all the contact information up at the end of today's presentation. And we will have a short survey that we hope that you'll hang around and complete for us so that we can continue to do a better job for you. Again, thank you. Thank you to my panelists, and thank you to my team behind the scenes, Alan Bediaco, Jen McHenry, for doing such a fabulous job for us today. And with that, I'll say goodbye.